Hello there, and welcome back to the Science Sleepy Minds. You're lying there, still and quiet, maybe the sheets twisted around your legs, maybe one foot peeking out to tempt the air. Outside, it's dark, at least it should be, and the hum of streetlights or crickets or the occasional muffled traffic leak into your ears like background static. You feel the fabric on your skin, the weight of your body pressing into the bed, and a strange awareness of your left knee for no reason. All this, without even thinking. You're tuned into the world in ways you don't even notice. And yet, you've been lied to. Remember in school when they told you about the five senses? Sight, hearing, touch, taste, smell. A neat little package wrapped in a ribbon of primary colors and kid-friendly illustrations. That tidy number 5 probably felt satisfying, like a well-sorted utensil drawer. But real biology, real perception, that's more like a junk drawer, full of half-broken flashlights, keys you don't recognize, and maybe a tiny compass for some reason. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Midnight in Melbourne, dawn in Detroit. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Because the truth is, those 5 senses are just the ones with good PR. The real list, it's long, weird, and a little bit chaotic. Scientists can't even agree on how many human senses there are. Some say 9, others say more than 20. Some just say depends on how you count. Not exactly the answer your elementary school teacher gave. You might already be familiar with some of these extra senses without realizing they count. Like knowing when you're hungry, dizzy, or way too hot in a crowded room. None of those fall under the classic 5. But your body tracks them constantly, through dedicated internal sensors whispering updates straight to your brain, like a team of underpaid interns keeping everything functional behind the scenes. Let's start with a little experiment. Don't move, but bring your attention to your right foot. You can sense it, right? You know where it is in space, even though you're not looking at it or touching anything with it. That's not sight, not touch, not hearing, smell, or taste. That's proprioception, a hidden sense we'll dive into later. But right now, just feel how many different kinds of sensory info you're pulling in at once. Your skin's aware of temperature, pressure, and vibration. Your inner ear is tracking your balance, even if you're just lying still. Your lungs and heart are auto-regulated based on barometric feedback you don't consciously perceive. And deep inside, tiny sensors monitor your blood chemistry like microscopic bouncers at a very exclusive nightclub. Historically, this limited 5-sense framework goes way, way back. Aristotle was probably the first to list them: sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. And look, we don't blame the guy. He didn't have fMRI scans or sensory neuropathy case studies. Still, it's a little like saying a smartphone is just a phone because it makes calls. Technically true, but wildly missing the point. Here's a quirky fact you'll love. The ancient Egyptians had their own twist. In some interpretations, they considered the heart itself to be a sense organ, not metaphorically, literally. They thought it could perceive truth, emotion, and the divine, which honestly sounds kind of poetic until you remember they also used crocodile dung as sunscreen. Which, no. Today, neuroscientists try to define a sense as any system with specialized receptors, dedicated neural pathways, and a unique type of data it sends to the brain. By that count, we're easily in the double digits. You don't just have taste, you have 5 kinds of taste buds and multiple cranial nerves delivering flavor reports to your brain like a panel of judges on the Great British Bake Off. Same with touch, soft pressure, sharp pain, temperature, vibration, all handled by separate detectors. So touch isn't a sense, it's an entire genre. There's even some debate about whether some internal drives, like sexual arousal or thirst, qualify as separate senses, or just outputs from other inputs. Historians still argue whether cultural awareness of body-based perception changed during the Enlightenment, when anatomical understanding outpaced spiritual interpretation. But even now, popular media clings to the old 5 because it's easy. You can package it into a BuzzFeed quiz. You can decorate a kindergarten classroom with posters. You can't really do that with proprioceptive interoception. Try getting a toddler excited about that. Still, the scientific community has been quietly building a much weirder picture of human sensation over the last century, especially as we dig into neurodiversity, brain injuries, and the effects of sensory deprivation. The more we understand the human body, the more we realize we're walking bundles of data collection, processing, and prediction. And a lot of that happens without our conscious permission. Here's a fun fringe tidbit. In the 1960s, researchers in Germany experimented with training people to sense magnetic north using headbands that buzzed slightly when you faced it. After a few weeks, participants said they could just feel direction, even when the device was turned off. Whether that was true perception or psychological adaptation, still debated, still kind of creepy. So why does all this matter? Because once you realize how many signals your body decodes without your conscious input, it changes the way you think about being human. You're not just in your body, you are your body, and it's more than 5 tidy inputs. It's a chaotic orchestra of sensors, processing power, and deeply confusing instincts. And that orchestra, it's been playing all along, even in your sleep. So, before we drift deeper into the senses you didn't know you had, let this first truth settle into your bones. You are not 5 things. You are 20+ whispers of self-awareness. And the show's just getting started. You're not falling, but your body is always just a breath away from believing you might be. That faint tug behind your eyes when you tip your head back too fast. The lurch in your stomach when an elevator drops. Or that delightful moment when you spin in a chair, stop, and the whole room decides it's on a lazy Susan. That, my friend, is your vestibular system working overtime. Nestled inside the inner ear, way past where your earbuds give up, sits your personal balance manager, a complex structure of fluid-filled tubes and sacs tucked into the bony labyrinth like secret plumbing. The semicircular canals, utricle and saccule don't just exist to confuse anatomy students. They're motion detectors, literally. Specialized hair cells inside these canals respond to the movement of fluid as your head tilts, turns, or accelerates, sending electrical signals straight to your brain about what's happening in 3-dimensional space. Your body reads this data constantly, comparing it with input from your eyes and muscles. If any of those systems disagree, say your eyes see movement but your body doesn't feel it, like when watching shaky cam footage, your vestibular system starts to panic. That's when you get motion sickness. Or, if you're a Victorian woman, the vapors. Here's the thing, balance is not passive. It's an active, ongoing calculation. Every time you walk downstairs or lean into a curve, your body is guessing, and mostly getting it right, where gravity's pulling you and how to stay upright. Even lying in bed, you still know which way is up. Unless, of course, something goes wrong. There's an old, widely circulated sailor myth that after spending enough time at sea, your brain permanently adjusts to rocking motions, and when you finally set foot on land, you feel like the ground is swaying instead. Sounds dramatic, but it's rooted in a very real condition called mal de débarquement syndrome. Some unlucky travelers experience weeks, or even months, of illusory motion after disembarking. Historians still argue whether early maritime journals exaggerate these sensations, or whether seafarers of the past experienced vestibular recalibration on a much more intense scale due to diet, hydration, and months without stable ground. And then there's the less poetic, more terrifying side of vestibular dysfunction: inner ear infections, concussions, Meniere's disease. When something goes wrong in this tiny balance center, your whole sense of the world tilts, literally. You can feel as though you're floating sideways through the air while simply standing in your kitchen. Some people describe it like being stuck on a tilting carnival ride operated by gremlins. Let's zoom in on a quieter, weirder moment, dreaming that you're falling. You know that sensation. Right as you're drifting off, suddenly you jolt awake because you're plummeting through nothingness. That called a hypnic jerk. And while researchers debate its exact mechanism, many agree it's partly due to the vestibular system sending a correction signal as your muscles relax too fast. Your body basically thinks, "Oh no, we've fallen off a cliff," and snaps you back into alertness like a panicked chihuahua. Another lesser-known gem: astronauts in microgravity often experience intense vestibular confusion. With no up or down, the inner ear's usual gravity-sensing mechanisms become useless. This leads to something called space adaptation syndrome, which sounds futuristic but mostly means throwing up while floating. Some cosmonauts trained for this by spending days underwater in neutral buoyancy environments. Did it help? Not always. But it did make for some deeply weird training footage. In more grounded scenarios, the vestibular system quietly shapes our daily lives. Dancers rely on it to spin without tipping over. Pilots train to override its panic signals during sharp turns. Babies start developing vestibular function before birth, responding to the gentle rocking of a parent walking. And when you're soothed by a swaying hammock or rocked to sleep in a car, you're not just relaxing, you're tapping into a deep biological comfort rooted in your balance system being gently lulled into calm. There's also a fascinating cultural angle. Some traditional rituals, like Sufi whirling or trance dances in indigenous ceremonies, use sustained spinning or swaying to intentionally induce altered states of consciousness. These movements directly stimulate and eventually override the vestibular system's standard operations, leading to feelings of transcendence, disorientation, or unity with the environment. Scientists have studied these effects with everything from EEGs to motion capture suits, but it all starts with a simple concept. Your body's sense of equilibrium is not fixed. It can be manipulated, even gently tricked. And you've probably done it too. Think back to childhood, spinning on a merry-go-round until the whole world slipped sideways and you collapsed into the grass, giggling and vaguely nauseous. Or maybe you remember being carried half asleep, your head lolling, feeling gravity shift but trusting someone else to keep you upright. That's the vestibular system on standby, humming quietly in the background, deciding whether you're safe or flailing. So next time you trip on absolutely nothing or lose your balance in the shower for no good reason, you can blame the inner ear. It's not perfect, but it's ancient, deeply tuned, and surprisingly elegant for something that looks like a microscopic snail in a labyrinth. And here's a cheeky final image to leave you with. Your body is basically a meat marionette suspended in gravity soup, held upright by a twitchy little plumbing system buried behind your jawbones. Charming, isn't it? Don't worry, you're doing great. You feel it before you know it. A blush rising, the sting of sun on the back of your neck, the cozy weight of a hot mug warming your fingers, or that particular misery of stepping barefoot onto a tile floor in January. Temperature isn't something you just notice. It's something your body feels with a startling intimacy. Welcome to Thermoception, the hidden sense that turns your skin into a living weather station. You might think of feeling hot or cold as part of touch, but it's not. Thermoception uses an entirely different set of receptors, tiny proteins called TRP channels embedded in the nerve endings of your skin and mucous membranes. These little molecular gatekeepers are picky. Some are activated by heat, others by cold, and a few are weirdly activated by chemicals, like how menthol makes your skin feel cold even though there's no actual temperature drop. Thanks, peppermint gum. There's a secret layering here. Thermoreceptors come in two major types: cold receptors, which are more numerous, and warm receptors, which are lazy by comparison. That's why you notice cold so much more dramatically than heat. You're evolutionarily wired to panic about frostbite faster than a fever. Go figure. What's truly fascinating is how local and precise this sense is. You don't feel cold in general. You feel cold in your elbow or your ear or your big toe that somehow escaped the blanket. Your brain maps these inputs constantly, merging skin temperature with internal cues from your core. If there's a mismatch, say, Your skin feels cool, but your core is overheating. Your body might shiver and sweat at the same time, like it can't decide which drama to commit to. Historically, the human relationship with temperature has shaped everything from migration patterns to architecture. The Romans were obsessed with controlling it. They built elaborate underfloor heating systems called hypocausts, which warmed public baths and villas with astonishing efficiency. Rich Romans essentially invented radiant floor heating 2,000 years before you ever stepped onto a toasty bathroom tile. On the quirky end of things, the Inuits are known to have developed not just clothing for warmth, but social customs to preserve shared body heat. They even had different words for various shades of cold, because trust me, there's a world of difference between nippy and mild threat of nose loss. Modern science still debates how subjective our sense of temperature truly is. Historians still argue whether ancient medical texts describing hot and cold illnesses were metaphorical or actual descriptions of dysregulated thermosensation. And today, the placebo effect can still trick your body into feeling warmer or colder based purely on expectation. Ever wrap up in a blanket and suddenly feel warmer before your body temp actually changes? That's your brain interpreting comfort as warmth, not always accurate, but strangely effective. Here's a fun experiment. Next time you hold a hot drink while having a conversation, see if you feel friendlier toward the other person. Not a joke, studies have shown that holding something warm can literally make you rate others as more trustworthy or kind. It's called temperature priming, and it works because your brain links physical warmth with emotional warmth. The two are processed in adjacent parts of the brain. Same goes for cold. People who feel chilly often interpret social interactions as distant or hostile. So yes, your mood can be manipulated by the office thermostat. Of course, thermoception isn't limited to the skin. Deep in your body, especially in the brain and spinal cord, there are central thermoreceptors that monitor your core temperature with obsessive regularity. These are the guys that trigger fevers when your immune system decides to turn up the internal thermostat and slow down viral invaders. That achy, sluggish, burning all over feeling during a fever, that's thermoception at war with itself. And let's not forget the sensory mayhem that happens during a heat wave or an extreme cold. When exposed to dangerously high temperatures, your thermoreceptors will scream at your nervous system to sweat, pant, vasodilate, whatever it takes to dump heat. If those tactics fail, things get grim. You stop sweating. You get dizzy. You lose the ability to gauge temperature altogether. That's heat stroke, and it means your internal sensors are shutting down like a fried circuit board. Cold exposures know better. In frostbite, your thermoreceptors can become so overstimulated they go numb, which is a cruel twist. You'll feel like your hands are warming up right before the tissue starts to die. That's why climbers and mountaineers learn to track warmth and tingling as danger signs. Your own body might lie to you, and not even maliciously, it's just overwhelmed. There's also a beautiful, if slightly cursed, trick some animals use called regional heterothermy. Penguins, for example, redirect blood flow to keep their core warm while letting their feet stay near freezing, just enough to avoid frostbite. Humans can't do this as efficiently, but we do have a primitive version. Ever notice how your nose, ears, and fingers are always the first to freeze? Your body prioritizes your internal organs. Everything else is negotiable. But even in safe, comfortable environments, your thermosensors are always working. That slight coolness when you shift positions in bed, that cozy pocket of trapped warmth under the covers, the blast of cold air from opening the fridge at midnight, all of it filters through your thermoception like sensory poetry, telling you whether to snuggle deeper or kick off the sheet. And here's a final weird one. Some people, especially those with certain types of neuropathy, lose the ability to feel temperature changes on the skin. They can scald themselves in hot showers without realizing it. Others experience thermal allodynia, where even mild temperatures feel like burning. It's a reminder that this hidden sense, like all the others, is fragile, complex, and deeply personal. So the next time you warm your hands on a mug or stick one foot out from the blanket to regulate your whole body like a human heat valve, remember, your skin isn't just a barrier. It's a sentient weather report, always whispering the forecast. And sometimes it lies. You can close your eyes and still touch your nose. You can walk through a dark room without clobbering your own knees. And if someone were to hand you an invisible object and say, "Touch your left elbow with your right pinky," odds are you could do it without hesitation. This isn't magic. It's proprioception, your body's quiet, never sleeping internal GPS. And no, it's not one of the original 5 senses. But in reality, proprioception might be the most important sense you've never heard about. It's how you know where your limbs are, even when you're not looking. It's how you scratch an itch behind your ear without needing to run a full diagnostic report. It's how you don't accidentally punch yourself in the face every time you try to put on a hoodie. At its core, proprioception is a conversation between your muscles, your joints, your tendons, and your brain. Stretch receptors, called muscle spindles, live inside your muscle fibers and report changes in length and tension. Then there are Golgi tendon organs, which hang out in the tendons and act like bouncers, telling your nervous system when force is getting a little too rowdy. Together, they create a continuous map of your body's shape and motion. You don't see it, but you live inside it. When you dance, walk, wave, type, or stretch without staring at your limbs, proprioception is the backstage manager making sure the show runs on time. Here's a quirky historical footnote. In the late 19th century, British neurophysiologist Charles Sherrington coined the term proprioception, from Latin proprius, meaning one's own. He considered it the third leg of perception, alongside exteroception, external senses, and interoception, internal monitoring. Sherrington also had a fabulous mustache and once suggested that the spinal cord had more personality than the brain. Bold claim. Now try a sleepy little experiment. Close your eyes and slowly raise one arm above your head. Without looking, can you tell when your elbow is bent or straight? When your hand is pointing forward or sideways? That's proprioception whispering in your ear. You don't need vision. You don't need touch. You just know. Of course, when things go wrong, proprioception suddenly becomes painfully noticeable. Ever wake up and try to move a completely numb arm you've slept on? That floppy limb, heavy and directionless, flails like it's been borrowed from a mannequin. That's what a total proprioceptive dropout feels like. Your limb is still there technically, but the map has gone blank. People with certain neurological disorders experience more lasting disruptions. A famous case from the 1970s involved a British man named Ian Waterman, who lost all sense of proprioception after a rare viral infection damaged his sensory nerves. He wasn't paralyzed, he could still move his muscles, but he had to relearn every movement by watching himself and concentrating on every action. Imagine having to think about every footstep, every spoon lift, every blink. That's life without proprioception. Historians still argue whether earlier records of clumsy individuals or inexplicably awkward gait patterns could reflect undiagnosed proprioceptive conditions. In older societies, these traits were sometimes attributed to laziness, drunkenness, or even demonic possession, because nothing says scientific rigor like blaming ghosts. And then there's the mystery of phantom limbs. When someone loses a limb, they often still feel it, sometimes in vivid detail. It itches, cramps, or reaches for things. This ghost sensation is partly the brain's proprioceptive map refusing to update. It still expects input from that missing arm or leg, and when none arrives, it fills in the blanks with sensation. It's as if your nervous system can't bear to let go. Athletes and performers often have highly trained proprioception. A gymnast flipping midair isn't thinking about the math of rotation. She just feels her body's position in space. Musicians, too, rely on this sense. A violinist doesn't watch their fingers. A pianist doesn't look at every key. They rely on a deeply ingrained map of their body in motion. And yes, it can be improved. Physical therapists often prescribe balance exercises, stretching routines, or even blindfolded coordination games to help people strengthen their proprioceptive feedback loops. Try standing on one foot with your eyes closed. If you're wobbling like a baby giraffe, congrats, you've found your next growth area. There's even evidence that proprioception might play a role in your emotional state. Ever feel more grounded or centered after stretching, walking, or doing yoga? That's not just endorphins. It's your brain reestablishing a confident internal map, saying, yes, I am here. Yes, these are my arms. Yes, I can reach for that cookie without knocking over the lamp. A weird but lovely tidbit. Some animals, like octopuses, seem to have a distributed version of proprioception. Their limbs operate semi-independently, reacting to the environment with minimal central input. Imagine your left arm deciding to tie your shoe while you're still arguing with your phone using the right one. Convenient or terrifying? Proprioception also explains why toddlers are clumsy. Their brains are still building that internal body map. They can't quite gauge how much force to use or where their limbs are mid-jump. It's not just coordination, it's calibration. And it fades too. As we age, proprioception often weakens. That's partly why older adults are more prone to falls. Their sensory systems don't update spatial information as quickly, and the once reliable map becomes patchy. Nighttime, low lighting, and slippery floors. That's a recipe for sudden gravity testing. But even now, as you lie still in bed, your proprioceptive system is gently humming. You shift your weight. You feel the twist in your hips. You stretch your toes without needing to look. This quiet background sense, uncelebrated, unsung, lets you remain you. So here's your sleepy reminder. You don't just live in your body. You sense your body constantly, even when your eyes are closed and your mind is drifting. You still know exactly where your pinky toe is. More or less. Pain is not a sense, it's a whole mood. Or at least that's how it feels when you stub your toe at 2 a.m. and the entire universe becomes your sworn enemy. But technically, pain is a sense, one that operates on its own terms, has its own dedicated system, and lies to you constantly. Welcome to nociception, the body's hidden, complicated relationship with ouch. Nociception isn't just feeling pain. It's the biological process of detecting harmful stimuli. Think of it as your body's security alarm going off when something's sharp, too hot, too cold, or chemically unfriendly. Specialized receptors, nociceptors, sit in your skin, joints, and organs waiting for trouble. When they detect tissue damage or the threat of it, they fire off an urgent message through your spinal cord and straight to your brain. Hey, something's wrong. But here, where it gets sneaky. You can have nociception without conscious pain, and you can feel intense pain without any nociceptive input. The brain, ever dramatic, decides whether or not to feel the signal based on context, memory, and sometimes vibes. It's like a gossip filter. Did this hurt last time? Do we care right now? Is anyone watching? Take the classic example. A soldier in battle sustains a serious injury but doesn't feel pain until the adrenaline wears off. That's because nociceptive signals are deprioritized in favor of survival. Meanwhile, someone else might suffer from chronic pain even when there's no ongoing tissue damage, because the nervous system has decided, against all logic, that something's still wrong. Thanks, nerves. A quirky historical moment. In the 1800s, surgeons debated whether pain was even necessary. Some argued it helped patients recover faster. Others, like early anesthesiologists, fought hard to prove that removing pain didn't compromise healing. One of the earliest successful uses of ether anesthesia in 1846 changed the entire medical field overnight. Before that, surgery was just a strap of leather to bite, and the hope you pass out fast. There's also the phenomenon of referred pain, when pain shows up somewhere other than where the issue actually is. Like how a heart attack might cause shoulder or jaw pain, or how a kidney stone might radiate discomfort to your lower back. Your body's wiring isn't exactly mapped like Google Earth. It's more like a subway system built by a poet. Some stops are oddly connected. And then there's the open question: is pain always bad? Historians still argue whether cultural perspectives on pain, especially in religious or warrior societies, shaped how people experienced it. In some traditions, pain was seen as cleansing, even noble. In others, it was punishment. And in a few fringe medical theories, it was considered a useful diagnostic tool to be celebrated rather than soothed. Spoiler: not super popular with patients. But nociception isn't all suffering and melodrama. It's also the reason you don't constantly injure yourself. People with congenital insensitivity to pain, a rare genetic condition, don't feel pain at all. Sounds cool for about 5 minutes, but in reality, it's a nightmare. Cuts go unnoticed. Broken bones aren't obvious. Fevers climb dangerously high before anyone realizes something's wrong. These individuals often have to learn pain cues from visual signals or avoid activities most of us do without thinking. Let's go deeper. Nociceptors come in a few flavors. Delta fibers carry quick, sharp pain like a bee sting or a paper cut. These are the ouch now signals. C fibers, on the other hand, are slow, throbbing, burning sensations, the kind of pain that sticks around and writes sonnets about itself. These slower signals keep you cautious, immobile, and full of regret. There's also an entire subfield of study on emotional pain and whether the brain processes it in similar ways. Spoiler: it kind of does. Brain scans have shown that social rejection, grief, and heartbreak activate some of the same neural pathways as physical pain. That gut punch when someone breaks your heart, that's not just a metaphor. It's a real physiological response. Oh, and here's a weird but oddly comforting fringe fact. The ancient Greeks believed pain could be pulled out of the body using animals. No, really. One treatment for headaches involved tying a small frog to the forehead. Did it work? Not likely. But it does show how deeply humans have always feared and tried to control pain, even with amphibians. Modern pain science also shows us something strange. Pain can be unlearned. Through practices like cognitive behavioral therapy, hypnosis, or mirror therapy for phantom limb pain, people can sometimes rewire the way their brain interprets pain signals. It's not a magic switch, but it suggests that pain isn't just something that happens to you. It's a thing your brain participates in, negotiates, sometimes even scripts. And that brings us to one of the most quietly powerful discoveries, the gate control theory. Proposed in the 1960s, it suggested that non-painful input, like rubbing your elbow after you bump it, can close the gate to pain signals in the spinal cord. Basically, soothing touch or distraction can suppress pain perception. Ever kiss a child's scraped knee to make it better? You are literally activating that mechanism. It's not fake comfort. It's real neural interference. So next time you feel pain, pause. Yes, it hurts. But beneath that sting or throb is a whole orchestra of signals, pathways, and negotiations happening in real time. Pain is not the enemy. Pain is the body's alarm system, and sometimes, like a fire alarm triggered by burnt toast, it's just overreacting. And sometimes, it's the only reason you're still alive. So take a deep breath, wiggle your fingers, shift your weight. Somewhere under the covers, your nociceptors are on quiet alert, ready to scream if the need arises. But for now, they're just whispering, all clear. Sleep well while they stand watch. You feel full but not stuffed, thirsty but not parched. Anxious butterflies flutter low in your stomach, and somewhere in the background, your heart has picked up its pace without asking permission. No one touched you, no one said a word, but your body knows something. Up. That's interoception, the internal sixth sense you didn't know you were using every second of the day. If proprioception is your body's GPS, then interoception is your dashboard display. The little blinking lights and gauges that tell you how fast your heart's beating, how stretched your bladder is, or whether your blood sugar just nosedived into cranky town. It's not about the external world or even your body's position in space. It's about you from the inside out. Right now, you're probably breathing in and out. Don't overthink it, too late. That rhythm, automatic, unconscious, but also something you can take control of, is one of the clearest examples of interoception. You notice you're breathing more when you're panicked or when it's disrupted, like during a cold. Most of the time, though, it just hums quietly in the background, until it doesn't. Inside your body, a swarm of receptors monitor oxygen levels, carbon dioxide, blood pressure, hydration, temperature, hunger hormones, muscle tension, and more. These inputs travel through a dense highway of nerves, especially the vagus nerve, which deserves its own bedtime story, up into the insula, a region deep in your cerebral cortex. The insula is like your brain's internal weather center, compiling all this messy data into a simple update. All systems nominal for now. Here's the twist. You don't consciously feel most of this stuff. You just get nudges, the urge to stretch, a flutter in your stomach, a tightness in your chest that makes you pause, blink, and ask yourself if you're stressed or just need a snack. You can't always tell, and that's the maddening magic of interoception. It's always there, quietly running the show, yet frustratingly vague when it needs to be clear. A surprisingly mainstream historical note. William James, the 19th century psychologist, proposed that our emotions are perceptions of bodily states. According to his theory, you don't tremble because you're afraid. You feel afraid because you're trembling. The body leads, the brain interprets. Historians still argue whether James overstated the point, but modern studies of interoception lend it serious weight. Your body might know you're scared, hungry, tired, or lovesick before your mind catches up. This theory's echoed in current models of emotional granularity, your ability to name and differentiate your feelings. Some people, especially those with high interoceptive awareness, are incredibly tuned in to their body's internal cues. They'll say, "I'm feeling quietly anxious but not panicked." Others, "Not so much." "I feel bad" might be the best they can do. And yes, people differ wildly in how well their interoceptive systems function. Some people barely notice they're hungry until they're hangry. Others feel every stomach gurgle like a dramatic novella. Conditions like anxiety, depression, and autism spectrum disorder are often linked to altered interoceptive processing. Too much sensitivity, or too little. Either way, the internal sense gets scrambled. Take panic attacks. Often they begin with subtle bodily changes, rising heart rate, shallow breathing, tight chest. For people with high interoceptive sensitivity, these signals light up the brain like emergency flares. Even if nothing's wrong, the brain goes, "Ah yes, danger," and kicks off a full sympathetic nervous system party. It's your body misinterpreting its own whispers as screams. On the flip side, some people experience interoceptive blindness. They're practically strangers to their own internal states. This can make it hard to know when you're full or when you're pushing your body too far. Athletes often train themselves to ignore interoceptive cues like exhaustion or pain. Great for sports, less great for long-term joint health. But interoception isn't always dramatic. It's also what makes you sigh with satisfaction after a good meal or close your eyes during a stretch because it just feels right. It's what makes a weighted blanket comforting. What makes you crave soup when you're sick or crawl into a ball during cramps. These behaviors aren't arbitrary. They're your body responding to its own subtle input. And guess what? You can train it. Mindfulness meditation, breathwork, yoga, and somatic therapies all help sharpen interoceptive awareness. Not because they teach you new tricks, but because they quiet the external noise so you can actually hear what your body been saying all along. Ever done a body scan meditation and suddenly realized your jaw's been clenched since 2007? Yeah, that. Here's your fringe fact of the night. Some researchers think interoception could play a role in our sense of self. Like philosophically, there's a theory that our ongoing awareness of our internal states creates the foundation of subjective experience. That without this quiet stream of internal data, you wouldn't feel like you. You just vanish into abstraction, like a spreadsheet with no formulas. Spooky, right? It also helps explain certain altered states of consciousness, like dissociation or floating sensations during trauma or meditation. When interoceptive signals are dialed down or disconnected, people report feeling detached from their bodies or emotions. It's like the dashboard went dark, and suddenly you're just guessing how fast you're going. So tonight, as you lie still and quiet, try tuning in. Notice your breath, not changing it, just noticing. Feel your heartbeat, not with your fingers, but from within. See if you can sense your stomach or your lungs or the slight warmth behind your eyes. That's interoception. It's not loud, it's not flashy, but it might be the real reason you know you're still here. Still human, still alive, still you. Time stretches and snaps. A minute under cold water feels like 5. An hour with your favorite person vanishes in a blink. You blink during a movie and suddenly it's been 2 hours, but somehow you're also aware of the passing time. Or are you? That squishy, slippery feeling is your brain's most speculative and least understood sense. Chronoception, the maybe real, maybe imaginary ability to sense time. And don't worry, you're not broken. Everyone experiences the time warp, time dragging in a waiting room, time flying when you're hyper-focused. And in the moments before sleep, time gets especially weird, minutes melt, memories blend, and that one anxious thought from 2009 takes up more bandwidth than it should. Your brain isn't counting seconds. It's constructing a felt experience. Like a dream, you don't realize you're dreaming until it ends. Chronoception isn't a neatly packaged sense like vision or hearing. There's no single receptor, no clear brain region lighting up like a Christmas tree. Instead, it seems to emerge from a blend of systems: the prefrontal cortex, basal ganglia, and even the cerebellum, best known for motor coordination, but apparently moonlighting as your internal metronome. One working theory is that your brain uses patterns, heartbeat, breathing, eye movements, to estimate how much time has passed. These internal rhythms form the basis of your subjective timekeeping. When those rhythms change, say, your heart races or your attention narrows, your time perception shifts with it. It's like your inner clock gets distracted or, worse, caffeinated. Some researchers think we don't have an internal clock at all, just a clever system of predictions based on changes. Historians still argue whether early humans developed time perception from environmental cues alone, like the sun and stars, or whether this internal sense evolved as a survival tool. After all, knowing how long you've been stalking prey or hiding from predators might have had real advantages. 5 more minutes is not a luxury in the savannah. A wonderfully weird historical footnote. St. Augustine of Hippo, writing around 400 CE, puzzled over time perception in his Confessions. He asked, "What then is time? If no one asks me, I know what it is. If I wish to explain it to him who asks, I do not know." So even 1,600 years ago, someone was already lying awake, asking the big questions. Welcome to the club, Augie. The sense of time gets even stranger when altered by illness, sleep deprivation, drugs, or extreme environments. People kept in isolation chambers often report bizarre distortions. Some think days have passed when it's been hours. Others believe it's been minutes when it's been a full day. Your brain, it turns out, does not like being separated from external time cues, which is ironic for an organ that claims to perceive time internally. Sleep deprivation especially messes with your chronoception. Pulling an all-nighter. Time starts crawling, then lurching. You feel like you've aged 2 years. And during REM sleep, your dream self often exists in a weird pocket where entire days, weeks, even lifetimes can unfold in what turns out to be 10 minutes of real time. You wake up wondering if that office job in the dream was a metaphor or a warning. There's also a distinction between prospective time perception, judging time while it's happening, and retrospective time perception, looking back on it. Waiting in line, time crawls. Looking back at the week, feels like it zipped by. Your brain, ever biased, edits the movie depending on when you're watching it. A strange little trick. When you do something new, your brain logs more information, which makes time feel longer in hindsight. That's why childhood summers felt endless, everything was novel. But as an adult, when most days follow familiar patterns, there's less data and time seems to evaporate. Want to slow it down? Do something weird? Take a new route? Eat breakfast for dinner? Learn the ukulele. Your Chronoception will thank you later. And get this, some animals probably experience time very differently. Studies have shown that small animals like flies or hummingbirds perceive time in more frames per second than we do, essentially moving through the world in slow motion. Their reactions are lightning fast because they're processing faster. In contrast, larger animals like elephants might have a slower tick. Time is not one size fits all. Even between species, the flow of the universe might feel wildly different. In humans, certain neurodivergent conditions also come with unique time signatures. People with ADHD, for example, often describe time as either now or not now. Minutes slip past unnoticed or stretch unbearably long. This isn't just a matter of poor discipline, it's a different kind of internal clock. And therapies that acknowledge that difference, rather than shamming it, tend to work better. Some researchers are exploring whether there might be microclocks within different brain regions, clusters of neurons that track time independently. In one study, scientists trained mice to press a lever after a precise interval. When they altered neural activity in the striatum, the mice's timing collapsed. They pressed too soon or too late. No external cues, just a scrambled internal countdown, which means that somewhere deep in your head, there might actually be a very sleepy little clockmaker. Or maybe multiple ones, all disagreeing. And then there's temporal binding, a fascinating glitch in your brain's wiring. Say you press a button and a light turns on a split second later. Your brain will fudge the timeline and make those events feel simultaneous. This makes the world feel more fluid, less staggered. You're experiencing a curated, slightly delayed version of reality, like watching a live stream with a built-in filter. So what does all this mean, lying here in the dark, hours slipping away like smoke? It means you don't just remember time, you feel it, you sense it, imperfectly, emotionally, subjectively. Your body and brain are constantly building a scaffold around your experiences, letting you anticipate what's next and reflect on what just passed. That's scaffolding, that's Chronoception. And it means this, time doesn't just pass. You carry it with you. Folded into breath, etched into your heartbeat, echoing in your bones. Even if you can't count it, you know it's there. You're not imagining it, that weird vibration in your jaw when someone speaks too close, that inexplicable hum you can feel in your bones during a thunderstorm, or the way music with too much bass seems to rattle your organs like a cocktail shaker. It's not just sound you're hearing through your ears. You're also feeling it with your bones, your skin, even your teeth. Welcome to the blurry borderland between hearing and touch, where bone conduction and subsonic frequencies create a sense of sound without sound. Let's get this out of the way first. Traditional hearing, air conduction hearing, involves sound waves vibrating the eardrum, which then shakes the tiny ossicles in your middle ear, eventually tickling the cochlea in your inner ear like an old friend with a favorite inside joke. That's the main way we hear. Sound enters through the ear canal and rides an elegant bony roller coaster straight into perception. But bone conduction skips the line. It sends vibrations straight through your skull bones to the cochlea, bypassing the eardrum entirely. It's the backstage pass of sound transmission, which is why, weirdly, you hear your own voice differently than anyone else hears it. Because when you speak, the sound resonates through your bones and soft tissues and your ears. That's why you sound like a confident demigod in your head and like a confused goose on voice memos. Inventors have been playing with bone conduction for centuries. Beethoven, famously deaf in his later years, discovered he could hear music by biting a metal rod connected to his piano and letting the vibrations travel directly through his jaw to his inner ear. There's even a historic sketch of him gnawing a conductor's baton like some kind of elegant German otter. Modern bone conduction headphones use this same principle. They rest on your cheekbones and transmit sound straight into your cochlea without blocking your ears. Great for runners, cyclists, or people who need to hear the world and their Spotify at the same time. Also perfect for sneaky secret agents who want to hear audio cues without alerting nearby eavesdroppers. Probably. Now let's get even weirder. Subsonic frequencies, also called infrasound, are sound waves below 20 Hz, too low for human ears to detect consciously, but not too low for your body to feel. These waves can travel long distances, penetrate walls, and create feelings of dread, discomfort, or awe. Some animals, like elephants and whales, use infrasound to communicate over vast distances. You just get the shivers and wonder why you suddenly feel like a ghost is watching. Historians still argue whether certain reports of haunted locations, creaky castles, old prisons, creepy basements, were actually caused by environmental infrasound. In one famous case, an engineer working in a supposedly haunted lab discovered that a specific air conditioning unit was generating low-frequency vibrations that aligned with the natural resonance of the human eyeball. The result? Subtle visual distortions and a deeply unsettling sense of presence. Ghosts? No. Just some overachieving HVAC. There's also compelling evidence that infrasound can trigger anxiety, disorientation, nausea, and even hallucinations at high enough amplitudes, which means your body might hear something your brain can't interpret and freak out accordingly. Not because it's scared of ghosts, but because it genuinely doesn't know what's happening. Some musicians, particularly experimental composers, have deliberately played with these frequencies. There's a performance of a piece called The Frequency of Fear that incorporated infrasound at just the right level to make the audience squirm. Many didn't know why. They just wanted to leave. So yes, there's such a thing as weaponized sound you can't actually hear. But bone sensing goes both ways. Humans also feel higher frequency sound through touch. Ever been at a concert where the bass rattled your sternum? That's not just auditory pleasure, it's mechanoception responding to vibrational pressure. You're physically participating in the music. This sense is part of why deaf individuals can enjoy music through vibration and rhythm. Sound isn't limited to ears. It's an immersive, multi-sensory experience. And while it might not qualify as a fully separate sense, this form of sound-tactile crossover reveals just how integrated your perception really is. The borders between hearing and feeling get fuzzy, just like the way certain sounds can give you chills, or how ASMR videos whispering, "Let the stress melt away," can cause actual physical tingles across your scalp and spine. Here's a lesser-known anatomical gem. Your vestibular system, remember that from earlier, also responds to sound. Extremely low frequency or high-intensity vibrations can stimulate the otolith organs in your inner ear, creating a sense of motion or dizziness. That's one reason why emergency sirens or certain industrial machines can make people feel nauseous or off balance. It's not just the volume, it's the frequency flirting with your sense of equilibrium. There's also something deeply primal about these vibrations. Thunderstorms, earthquakes, stampeding animals, all generate low-frequency vibrations you can feel before you hear. Some researchers believe early humans used this sensory input to detect danger, like distant thunder signaling a coming storm, or the rumble of hooves long before the herd arrived. Your body's still wired for that, even if you're mostly using it now to judge when your neighbor's bass is too loud. And yes, animals have you beat. Cats, for example, can detect extremely low frequencies and often hear earthquakes before humans do. Elephants seem to communicate through infrasound over miles. Even crocodiles use vibration to locate prey in murky waters. Your body doesn't have that level of finesse, but you do share the same basic ability to feel the world vibrating. So next time you feel that odd hum in your jaw or that pleasant thrum through your chest when a favorite song drops its bass, remember, you're hearing in more ways than one. The bones in your head are carrying secret messages to your inner ear. The air around you is buzzing with frequencies you may never consciously register, but your body listens anyway. And somewhere in the quiet, your skull hums gently like an antenna, tuned into a world that never stops vibrating. You're not a pigeon, probably, but your body might be hiding something suspiciously bird-like, a quiet, twitchy sense of orientation that doesn't rely on sight, sound, or memory. Something strange and mostly unconscious. Something Magnetic. Welcome to Magnetoception, the whispered possibility that humans might be able to sense the Earth's magnetic field. Just a little, just enough, just barely. This is the human sense most scientists will casually side-eye if you bring it up at parties. And fair enough. It's not well understood, it's hard to measure, and it doesn't show up with the clarity of, say, smells like cinnamon or ow, that's hot. But the idea that your body might be quietly tracking magnetic fields, that's not science fiction. That's biology, and it's happening all over the animal kingdom. Birds are the rock stars here. Migratory species like robins and homing pigeons use the Earth's magnetic field to navigate across thousands of miles. Some scientists believe they have magnetically sensitive proteins, called cryptochromes, in their eyes, which might allow them to see magnetic fields as visual patterns overlaying the world, like GPS goggles coated in squiggles. Sea turtles, salmon, bees, mole rats, even cows. Yes, cows show behavioral responses to the Earth's magnetic field. Herds of grazing cattle tend to align themselves along magnetic north-south axes. Historians still argue whether ancient farming practices hinted at this instinct, or if that's just a modern retcon with a magnetic twist. Either way, cows might know something we don't. Probably not taxes, but definitely magnetism. So what about you? Well, it gets weird. In recent decades, a handful of studies have tested whether humans might have a low-key magnetoceptive ability. One set of experiments involved rotating magnetic fields around seated volunteers in a Faraday cage, a metal room that blocks electromagnetic interference. The subjects didn't see, hear, or feel anything consciously, but their brain waves shifted in consistent patterns, particularly in the alpha range. Their brains noticed the magnetic shift, even if their mouths had nothing to report. Other experiments trained people to detect subtle changes in direction while blindfolded, in featureless environments. Some could consistently orient themselves toward magnetic north without any visible or tactile cues. Not all participants succeeded, though, and replication of these results has been inconsistent. Some researchers suspect only a portion of the population might retain this sense, like a vestigial sixth toe you can't quite see. One theory proposes that humans might still carry magnetite crystals, tiny iron-based particles that align with magnetic fields, inside our skulls, particularly near the sinuses. These crystals have been found in brain tissue and are known to exist in animals with magnetic senses. What they do in humans, no one really knows, but they're there, just hanging out, possibly whispering direction updates you'll never hear. Here's your fringe fact of the night. During the Cold War, Soviet scientists studied the possibility of using magnetic field manipulation to alter mood, orientation, or even consciousness. Some of these experiments were top secret and only partially declassified. Dozens of them made very little sense, but buried in the chaos were hints of magnetic field sensitivity in humans under controlled conditions. Whether these findings were real, flawed, or part of an elaborate disinformation campaign is still debated. And if that doesn't rattle your compass, there's always the ancient lore. Many cultures have myths of direction sense or internal guidance, like desert nomads who could find their way across dunes without stars or landmarks, or Pacific Islanders navigating vast oceans by feel and intuition alone. Some of this, of course, is expertise, memory, and environmental observation, but some of it might involve quiet sensory input from the magnetic world. There's a spiritual twist, too. Some people report feeling direction during meditation or altered states of consciousness, not like I'm facing north, but more like an embodied pull or resistance, like their bodies prefer certain orientations. Ancient temples and tombs often align with magnetic poles, and while this might be coincidence, or solar alignment, or symbolic design, it raises questions about what ancient architects might have felt, noticed, or known intuitively. Still, don't get too excited. There's no consensus in the scientific community that humans have a functional navigational magnetic sense, but there's no clear proof that we don't either. And when your brain changes its activity pattern in response to invisible magnetic shifts, Well, let's just say something happening. Whether it's useful or conscious or just another evolutionary leftover remains open. And yet think about this. How often do you just know which way is north? Maybe it's habit, maybe it's street signs, but maybe, just maybe, it's your head full of iron humming ever so slightly to the song of the Earth's field lines. Now, here's a sleepy little image to tuck in with. You lying still, a soft fan whirring, the weight of your body mapped out in pressure points against the mattress, and deep inside your skull, invisible specks of magnetite silently aligning, shifting, tuning to the planet's oldest signal. The magnetic field that wraps around Earth like a protective cocoon, constantly pulsing and whispering, this way, this way, this way. You don't hear it, but you might feel it. Just a little. The smell hits you before you even see the thing it's attached to. Banana bread, cut grass. That one specific cologne worn by the first person you ever crushed on in high school. You're not just smelling something, you're remembering it, feeling it, traveling through time face first. That's not magic. That's your olfactory sense doing something no other sense can do quite like this. Hijack your memory like a seasoned thief. Smell doesn't just tell you what's cooking. It reaches deep into your brain, skipping the polite line of sensory processing and marching straight into the limbic system, home of emotion, motivation, and long-term memory. While sight and sound go through the thalamus, the brain's uptight traffic cop, smell jumps the gate. It's the only sense that plugs directly into the amygdala and hippocampus, which explains why sense can hit you like a freight train full of fourth-grade flashbacks. There's a scientific reason you suddenly remember your grandmother's kitchen because someone nearby is using the same dish soap. The sensory signal from your nose isn't just about chemical detection. It's tied into the emotional context of when you first experienced it. That memory file wasn't just saved, it was scented. Here's a fun historical note. Napoleon Bonaparte was famously obsessed with the scent of his lover Josephine. He even wrote to her from campaign trails asking her not to bathe before his return, because her natural scent was, in his words, better than any perfume. Romantic, sure, also a little funky. Historians still argue whether Napoleon's letters were unusually steamy for his time or just proof that smell has always been intimately connected to memory and desire. Let's back up to the biology. Inside your nose is the olfactory epithelium, a postage stamp-sized patch of sensory neurons specialized to detect molecules drifting in the air. These neurons are part of your olfactory nerve, which relays the chemical gossip directly to the brain's scent processing headquarters. Humans can detect over 1 trillion different scents. Yes, trillion, though most of us only consciously recognize a few thousand. And while you may not think of smell as your most useful sense, it's quietly vital. It warns you of smoke, gas leaks, spoiled food, or that dubious decision to microwave fish in a shared office. It also flavors your meals. What you call taste is mostly smell. Try eating a jelly bean with your nose pinched shut and you'll see what I mean. Without smell, food is reduced to texture and vague sweetness. Not exactly MasterChef material. There's a phenomenon called specific anosmia, the inability to detect a particular scent, often genetic. Some people can't smell androstenone, a musk-like compound found in human sweat and pork. To those who can detect it, it smells either pleasant, awful, or like nothing at all. No two noses are quite the same. You're a bespoke scent processor. Congrats. And then there's the bizarre world of phantasmia, smelling things that aren't there. Some people with this condition experience phantom scents like burning rubber, old perfume, or cigarette smoke for no external reason. It can be caused by migraines, infections, or neurological misfires. The brain, it seems, sometimes invents smells just to keep you on your toes. Now brace yourself for a delightfully weird fringe tidbit. In the early 20th century, some European doctors tried diagnosing diseases based on body odor. Tuberculosis, they claimed, had a sweet, musty smell. Typhoid, like baked bread. The idea that diseases had unique scent signatures persisted in various forms, and guess what? It's now coming back. Scientists are training dogs and even machines to detect illnesses like cancer, Parkinson's, and COVID-19 based on volatile organic compounds emitted by the body. So your body might be telling you something important, right under your nose. Some non-human animals have you thoroughly beat in this department. Bloodhounds, for example, have over 300 million olfactory receptors compared to your measly 6 million. Bears can smell food from over 20 miles away. And sharks, they can detect a single drop of blood in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. You, on the other hand, are mostly just good at identifying when someone's burned popcorn. Still, the human nose is more powerful than we give it credit for. Studies have shown that blindfolded people can follow a scent trail across a field using only their noses, clumsily but successfully. You're not completely helpless, just a bit out of practice. And yes, olfactory memory is tightly connected to trauma, too. Survivors of accidents, war zones, or other intense experiences often report powerful, intrusive scent-based memories. A whiff of diesel, fire, or even hand sanitizer can transport someone instantly back into the heat of a moment. Unlike visual memories, which tend to fade into static, scent memories remain sharp, emotional, and, unfortunately, persistent. Your sense of smell also changes with age, health, and hormonal shifts. Pregnant people often report hypersensitive noses, sometimes so intense it triggers nausea. It's part of the body's protective instincts, an internal sensor turning up the gain to avoid harmful substances. Meanwhile, people with neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's often lose their sense of smell early in the progression, sometimes years before other symptoms appear. That little nasal alert system might be giving you neurological updates before you even realize anything's wrong. And let's not forget the emotional palate. Smells don't just trigger memories, they shape moods. Citrus scents can elevate energy. Lavender calms the nervous system. Baking bread increases property values. Seriously, real estate agents have been known to bake cookies before showings to make homes feel warmer, safer, and somehow more buyable. So tonight, as the air cools and you drift closer to sleep, take a quiet breath through your nose. Maybe there's a hint of laundry detergent in your pillow. Maybe the faint memory of a candle you haven't lit in weeks. Maybe just the warm, human scent of your own skin under the covers. That's not just background data. That's memory, emotion, history, you as interpreted through the air. Your nose may not lead you across continents like a pigeon, but it can lead you back in time, to the smell of crayons, to the inside of your grandmother's coat, to the first person who ever hugged you too tight and didn't let go. The brain doesn't forget. It just waits for the right smell. You think you know taste: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, umami. That trusty quintet you memorize sometime between learning what a tongue is and burning it on pizza cheese. But just like the five senses myth, the idea of only 5 basic tastes is charmingly outdated. Because hiding behind your taste buds is a whole underworld of flavors waiting to be classified, debated, and occasionally mispronounced. Your tongue. It's got more gears than you think. Let's start with the big 5, those are real. Sweet signals energy like sugar and carbs. Salty means essential minerals. Sour warns of spoiled food. Bitter, often poisonous, so evolution made us suspicious of it. And umami, the most recent to be formally recognized, means savory, the deep, brothy richness found in meat, soy sauce, mushrooms, and Parmesan rinds. That last one, umami, wasn't widely accepted until the early 2000s, even though it was discovered by Japanese chemist Kikini Ikeda way back in 1908. He isolated glutamate as the compound responsible and basically invented MSG. For decades, Western scientists dismissed it, probably because it was discovered here. Historians still argue whether the delay was due to scientific skepticism or plain old culinary snobbery. But umami was just the beginning. Now we're talking about kokumi, a proposed 6th taste that's not exactly a flavor but more of a mouthfeel enhancer. It's been described as fullness or continuity. Garlic, onions, and aged cheese contain curcumin compounds that deepen the complexity of a dish without adding new flavors. It's like reverb in music, less about what you hear, more about how it feels. Another contender, fat, or more specifically, fatty acids. For a long time, scientists assumed the taste of fat was all texture and smell, smooth, rich, oily. But newer research shows we have specific receptors, called CD36, that respond directly to fatty acids. The jury's still out on whether this deserves basic taste status, but your body definitely perks up when it senses fat, especially at midnight, in front of the fridge. Let's not forget carbonation. That tingling fizz, not just a feeling. Your taste buds detect carbon dioxide with a special enzyme called carbonic anhydrase 4, which breaks it down and sends a neural signal. Technically, this might straddle the line between taste and touch, but it's a great excuse to count soda as a science experiment. Even metallic taste is on the table, experienced by some people during pregnancy, after chemotherapy, or when using certain utensils. No one agrees on whether it qualifies as a basic taste, but it's undeniably real. Same goes for astringency, that dry, puckering mouthfeel you get from red wine or strong tea. It's caused by tannins binding to saliva proteins, making your mouth feel like it's been sandblasted by polite Victorian ghosts. Here's your fringe tidbit. In 2007, a team of researchers proposed a potential water taste. They found that when animals drank pure water, specific taste receptor cells in the tongue responded, even in the absence of other flavors. Water, the ultimate flavorless flavor, makes you rethink those hydration reminders. Now let's talk about your taste buds, those little mushroom-shaped clusters of sensory cells scattered mostly across your tongue, but also your cheeks, soft palate, and even the roof of your mouth. Each taste bud contains 5,100 receptor cells and responds to multiple types of stimuli. Contrary to the old tongue map myth you probably saw in school, there's no strict zoning. You can detect sweet at the back of your tongue and bitter at the front. It's just that some areas have more of certain receptor types. That taste map, total bunk. It came from a mistranslated 1901 German study, and somehow we all agreed to print it on posters for 100 years. Go figure. And yet your perception of taste goes far beyond the tongue. Enter flavor, the full-bodied illusion that combines taste, smell, texture, temperature, and even sound. Ever eaten a crunchy potato chip and felt disappointed by a stale one? That crunch registers in your auditory cortex. It sounds fresh. Your brain weaves together dozens of inputs to create a seamless flavor experience. There's also the phenomenon of taste blindness. About 25% of people are non-tasters for bitter compounds like Prop 6N propylfuracil. Others are super tasters, with denser populations of taste buds that make broccoli and kale taste outrageously bitter. Interestingly, super tasters are more common in women and certain genetic groups. Also, they tend to hate spicy food. Their tongues are basically tiny, overly sensitive drama queens. Speaking of spice, capsaicin, the compound that makes chili peppers hot, doesn't actually register as a taste at all. It activates pain receptors, not taste buds. So when you say spicy food hurts, you're not being dramatic. You're reporting literal nerve stimulation. Historians still argue whether early cultures used spicy food for preservation, culinary thrill-seeking, or as a sneaky way to measure someone's courage. Can't handle the chili. You're out of the tribe. And taste is not constant. It changes with age, illness, stress, and hormonal shifts. Children have more taste buds than adults, which is why they're so picky. It's not just attitude. Their tongues are like flavor amplifiers. Meanwhile, people who smoke or take certain medications may lose sensitivity over time. Even mood affects taste. Depression can dull flavor perception, while anxiety can make some foods taste oddly metallic or sour. And then there's placebo. In blind taste tests, people often rate expensive wine as better than cheap wine, even when it's the same bottle. Your brain loves a good story. Label it organic, artisanal, or small batch, and your taste buds might literally interpret it differently. Flavor isn't just chemistry, it's psychology. So as you lie there, tucked into your quiet little cocoon, think about all the stories your mouth has told you over the years. The first lemon you ever tasted, the betrayal of a Brussels sprout, that one perfect bite of pizza, too hot to eat but too good to wait. You didn't just taste them. You felt them, remembered them, built a library of edible moments. And next time someone says there are only 5 tastes, just smile gently. Because you've got at least 7. Your eyes are closed. You're surrounded by darkness, or maybe just the fuzzy amber glow of a street lamp leaking through your window. No images, no colors, and yet your body still knows it's nighttime. Your brain begins the long, slow melt into sleep. Your metabolism winds down. Your temperature drops by a degree or 2. It feels inevitable. And that's no accident. Your body is responding to light you don't see through a hidden sensory system called non-visual photoreception. Yes, you're seeing nothing, but you're still sensing light. Here, how it works. Scattered throughout your eyes, specifically in your retina, are special cells called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, or IPRGC if you want to sound smart and tired. These cells don't help you see images. They don't care about shapes or color or depth. They care about brightness, about how much light is in your environment overall. And they send that information straight to your suprachiasmatic nucleus, a mouthful of a brain structure, which is basically the body's master clock. That's your circadian system, the internal rhythm that regulates sleep, alertness, body temperature, hormone release, and more. These IPRGC act like light sensors for the clock, keeping it synced to the 24-hour cycle of the Earth's rotation. The key ingredient they're sensitive to: blue light. And not just sky blue, any high-energy visible light, like the glow from your phone, your laptop, your TV, or those horrible overhead LEDs at the dentist's office. This is why doom scrolling in bed wrecks your sleep. It tells your brain it's daytime, even if your soul knows better. But here's the wild part. Even blind individuals, those who have no conscious vision, can still regulate their circadian rhythms if their IPRGC are intact. They may not see light, but their bodies still know when it's there. Studies have shown that these non-image forming cells still respond to brightness, adjusting hormone levels and sleep cycles accordingly. That's non-visual photoreception in action. And it's not just about sleep. This hidden sense affects mood, cognition, and even immune function. People who don't get enough daylight, or who live under constant artificial lighting, often experience disrupted circadian rhythms, leading to fatigue, irritability, and something charmingly called social jet lag. That groggy, off-kilter feeling you get from late nights and inconsistent mornings. Blame your light-sensing ganglion cells. Let's drop a quirky historical tidbit. In the 1950s, scientists tried to isolate the human clock by sealing volunteers in underground bunkers with no external cues. They controlled their own lights and sleep schedules, and the results were strange. Many settled into slightly longer than 24-hour rhythms, while others lost all temporal anchoring entirely. One man reportedly stayed underground for 130 days and emerged thinking it had only been 50. Historians still argue whether these studies revealed a true, free-running, human clock, or just documented what happens when you let people become time-drunk spelunkers. Now let's travel beyond your eyeballs. You may not know it, but you also have opsins, light-sensitive proteins, scattered throughout your body, including your skin and brain. Some are similar to those found in your eyes, while others are structurally distinct and functionally mysterious. These extraocular opsins are part of an ongoing scientific mystery. Are we photoreceptive in more ways than we've realized? In plants, photoreceptors regulate everything from growth direction to blooming time. In some animals, like reptiles and amphibians, light detection occurs directly through the skin or brain. The pineal gland, nestled deep in your own head, evolved from a light-sensitive third eye in some of our distant vertebrate ancestors. In lizards, this structure still pokes through the skull. In you, it's now buried, but it still regulates melatonin, the hormone that tells your body it's time to shut down and dream weird dreams. So in a way, your body is still watching the sun go down, even when you're not. And what happens when this system gets out of sync? Welcome to circadian misalignment, a condition where your body's internal clock drifts away from the day-night cycle. Shift workers are notoriously affected. Jet-lagged travelers too, but even regular folks, those who stay up too late under artificial light and wake too early with the alarm, experience micromisalignments every week. It's like constantly being in a low-grade time zone mismatch. Some researchers believe this may contribute to seasonal affective disorder, a type of depression linked to reduced daylight. The solution? Light therapy, not a metaphor, but actual boxes that simulate natural daylight to stimulate your photoreceptors and nudge your clock back on schedule. And then there's the dark side, literally. Light pollution has become such a pervasive force that some people go their entire lives without seeing true darkness. But your body needs darkness. Darkness tells your brain to release melatonin. It's not a passive absence of light. It's an active, physiological trigger for rest, repair, and regeneration. Here's your fringe science moment. Some preliminary studies suggest that the skin might also respond to light in ways we don't fully understand. Light-sensitive proteins on skin cells could influence metabolism, inflammation, or DNA repair. There's even research exploring photobiomodulation, the therapeutic use of red and near-infrared light to stimulate healing. Whether this is real medicine or expensive pseudoscience with mood lighting, still being debated. But even if you stick to what we do know, the message is clear. Light isn't just something you see. It's something you feel, something that moves through you, shaping your biology minute by minute. So tonight, when you dim the lights and let the darkness wrap around you like a heavy, silent blanket, you're not just making things cozy. You're whispering a message to your ancient inner clock. It's time to rest. The sun is gone. The stars are watching now. Your body listens, even if your eyes are closed. Even if you forgot how bright the moon can be. Even if you're already halfway to sleep. You might not think your skin has opinions, but spend 5 minutes wearing a scratchy sweater or trying to peel off a Band-Aid, and suddenly your largest organ becomes the pickiest part of your whole personality. Your skin doesn't just protect you from the elements. It feels things. Constantly. From the lightest feather touch to the satisfying squeeze of a tight hug, your skin hosts an entire secret society of receptors tuned to texture, pressure, and motion. This isn't just touch. This is Chronoception, and your skin. It's the busiest data center in town. Let's do a quick census. Scattered across your skin are 4 primary types of mechanoreceptors. Meissner's corpuscles, light, fluttery touch. Think fingers brushing your forearm or the horror of walking into a spider web. Merkel discs, steady pressure and texture. Great for reading braille or identifying coins in your pocket without looking. Pacinian corpuscles, deep pressure and vibration. They're why you feel your phone buzz through your jeans or the reverberation of bass on your ribs. Ruffini endings, skin stretch and sustain pressure. They keep track of how much your skin's being pulled, like when you're gripping something or hugging too tight. These aren't random. They're strategically located depending on the task. Your fingertips, packed with Meissner's and Merkel, for high-definition tactile perception. Your back, sparse in comparison. That's why it's so satisfying when someone scratches it. You finally get input your skin rarely receives. Think of it as sensory enrichment for neglected dermal zones. Historically, touch was considered the most primitive of senses. Aristotle lumped it in with animal instinct, the sort of thing that didn't require much intellect. Vision and hearing. Those were the refined senses of scholars and poets. But here's a modern twist. Premature infants gain weight faster and develop better when they receive regular, gentle touch. Hugging. Skin-to-skin contact, massage, it's not optional fluff, it's fuel. In fact, the sense of touch begins developing around 8 weeks into gestation, before your eyes or ears come online. You were already feeling long before you saw your first flicker of light. No wonder touch remains so primal, so emotionally loaded. Babies need it. Adults crave it. And yes, there are touch deficits that lead to sensory undernourishment, especially in high-tech, low-contact modern life. Let's slide into something weirder: affective touch. This is a relatively new area of research focused on a specific class of nerve fibers called C-tactile afferents. These slow-conducting, unmyelinated fibers respond best to gentle, caress-like strokes at skin temperature, literally tuned for affectionate human touch. Not pain, not pressure, just comfort. They're found mostly in hairy skin, like your forearms, not your palms, and their primary role: emotional regulation. Affective touch doesn't tell you where something is. It tells you how it feels emotionally. This is the kind of touch that makes you feel safe, loved, grounded, like someone smoothing your hair or resting a hand on your back during a difficult moment. In neurotypical adults, this system lights up brain regions associated with emotional processing and social bonding. In people with autism or sensory processing disorders, this type of touch can be muted, overwhelming, or even unpleasant. Another reminder that every sensory system is deeply personal. Now let's talk tickles. Why can't you tickle yourself? It's not because you're bad at it. It's because your brain cancels out expected input. The cerebellum predicts the sensation and downregulates the response. Ticklishness, then, is tied not just to nerve endings but to surprise. Your body is fine with pressure, but if it's unpredictable, cue the squirming. Also, some animals use tickling as social bonding. Rats laugh ultrasonically when tickled. No, really. You just need the right microphone to hear it. Speaking of unusual sensitivity, your lips and fingertips have disproportionately large representations in the somatosensory cortex, the brain area that maps bodily sensation. That's why tiny details on your finger pads feel huge, and why kissing, yes, we're keeping this PG-13, is such a potent, multi-layered experience. A single kiss activates pressure, temperature, emotion, muscle tension, and even posture sensors. It's basically a whole sensory TED Talk. Let's throw in a historical footnote here. Medieval physicians believed skin sensations were governed by spirits traveling through the body, especially in sensitive areas like palms and soles. These spirits were probably early guesses at nerve transmission, though they also blamed demons for unexplained itching, which, let's be honest, does feel accurate during mosquito season. Now for your fringe fact. In certain neurological conditions, people develop tactile hallucinations, like the feeling of bugs crawling on their skin, formication, from the Latin formica, meaning ant. It's a real, measurable condition, often associated with substance use, withdrawal, or severe anxiety. Your skin's sensory system can misfire, interpreting electrical noise as crawling, tingling, or burning. The body feels it, but the source, nowhere to be found. And of course, there's phantom vibration syndrome, when you feel your phone buzz in your pocket and there's no notification. It's not just you. Up to 90% of people report these phantom alerts. Why? Your brain been conditioned to expect that input. Mechanorception can generate anticipatory echoes. Your nerves whisper, "It's time," and your cortex goes, "I felt that," even when it didn't happen. Mechanorception isn't just about pleasure or warning. It's about navigation, too. You use pressure feedback to type, to write, to dance, to walk. Every step you take sends subtle signals about ground resistance, weight distribution, and force. Even lying in bed now, your skin is registering the shape of the mattress beneath you, the cling of the blanket, the occasional twitch of muscles as you settle into stillness. And you barely notice, until a tag itches your neck or a breeze stirs the fine hairs on your arm and your brain turns its head like, "Wait, what was that?" Your skin is a giant whispering antenna. Not just a shield, a voice, a map. It tells you where you end and the world begins. And sometimes, it tells you you're not alone. So next time you feel that satisfying scratch, that warm hug, that weird itch that seems to move around with a mind of its own, remember, touch isn't just physical. It's emotional, directional, psychological. And tonight, as your blanket hugs your shoulders and the mattress remembers your shape, your skin is singing a lullaby. In pressure, in stillness, in softness, somewhere in the deep, squishy corridors of your chest, a tiny army of pressure sensors is quietly taking notes. Every heartbeat, every arterial surge, every rise and fall in the tides of your blood. You don't feel them, not really. But they're listening, adjusting, responding, keeping you upright, alert, and alive. This, dear listener, is baroreception, your hidden internal radar for blood pressure. You've never thanked your baroreceptors, and honestly, they don't expect applause. They're introverts. They live tucked away in your carotid sinus, near your neck and the aortic arch around your heart, where they monitor the stretch of your arterial walls. The more those walls stretch, the higher your blood pressure. It's a mechanical system, but its impact is nearly poetic. When your pressure rises, they whisper to your brain and your body shifts course, slowing the heart, relaxing the vessels, balancing the flow. This quiet regulation happens thousands of times a day, and when it works, you never know it's happening. But when it does, well, that's when the dizziness hits. That swoony, fuzzy-headed feeling when you stand up too fast. That's a baroreceptor moment. A real classic. Blood pressure drops, your brain goes, "Excuse me, we need more juice up here," and your baroreceptors scramble to bring everything back online. It's called orthostatic hypotension, and it's more common than you'd think, especially in the dehydrated, the overcaffeinated, or the chronically underslept, which is probably most of us. If you've ever had to grab a doorframe after standing too quickly, congratulations. Your internal pressure sensors were working overtime. The cool part, this system responds within seconds. The autonomic nervous system takes its cue from the baroreceptors and either tightens blood vessels or nudges the heart to beat faster. This isn't a polite suggestion, it's a command. Historically, baroreception wasn't understood until the early 20th century. Before then, physicians knew blood pressure mattered, but not how the body tracked it in real time. In 1932, researchers discovered that cutting the nerves leading from the carotid sinus in dogs caused dangerous spikes in blood pressure. That was the aha moment. There were sensors, hidden ones, watching, regulating like tiny vascular librarians. Here's a strange twist. Astronauts in zero-gravity experience major baroreceptor confusion. In space, without gravity pulling blood downward, fluids shift toward the head and chest. The baroreceptors go, "Whoa, too much pressure," and trigger a drop in blood volume and heart rate. When astronauts return to Earth, they often experience dizziness because their baroreceptors need time to recalibrate. They've essentially been tricked by physics. Now you might wonder, do these sensors affect mood, energy, focus? Yes, indirectly, but absolutely. When blood pressure is unstable, too low, or fluctuating wildly, it can affect oxygen delivery to the brain, leaving you foggy, lightheaded, or even anxious. There's evidence that panic attacks can be intensified by hypersensitive baroreceptors interpreting normal pressure shifts as danger. And in some rare cases, baroreceptors can become overly dramatic. There's a condition called baroreflex failure where the feedback loop stops working properly. The result? Sudden spikes or drops in blood pressure with no obvious cause. Sweating, flushing, heart palpitations. Your body behaving like it's in danger when you're just, say, microwaving soup. It's rare, but real. There's also neurocardiogenic syncope, better known as fainting due to sudden drops in heart rate and blood pressure, often triggered by stress, pain, or standing for too long. Historians still argue whether fainting spells in 18th century literature were exaggerated or whether tightly laced corsets and warm salons made baroreflex episodes genuinely common. Either way, the Victorian fainting couch had its moment. But baroreception isn't all drama. Most of the time, it's your body's most reliable autopilot. Even now, lying still, your heart rate subtly fluctuates with your breath. Breathe in, heart rate increases. Breathe out, heart rate slows. This is called respiratory sinus arrhythmia, and it's a sign of healthy baroreflex activity. The system is finely tuned to match blood flow to oxygen needs in real time. You're doing this dance right now, automatically, effortlessly. Baroreceptors also play a role in sleep. As you settle into deeper stages of rest, your blood pressure drops, your heart rate slows, and the baroreceptors ease off. But if something disturbs this cycle, like sleep apnea, stress, or a late-night caffeine binge, they'll kick back in, subtly raising pressure to keep your body on alert. It's why bad sleep sometimes feels like you didn't sleep at all. Your body stayed in a state of quiet vigilance. And then there's the therapeutic side. Some emerging treatments for treatment-resistant hypertension involve electrical stimulation of the baroreceptors. It's called baroreceptor activation therapy, and it uses implanted devices to trick the brain into lowering blood pressure. Think pacemaker, but for pressure. The early results are promising and beautifully ironic. We're now building machines to whisper in the ear of a system that already whispers to us. Let's not forget, this sense doesn't operate alone. Baroreception works alongside interoception, thermoception, and nociception to paint a full picture of what's happening inside your body. When your blood pressure drops, your baroreceptors notice. But when your body interprets that as dizziness or fear or heat flushing your cheeks, that's the chorus of hidden senses singing together. So tonight, while your conscious mind goes offline, your baroreceptors stay on duty. They'll keep watch while you sleep, quietly adjusting your pressure, tracking every heartbeat, sending soft reports to the brain like loyal little spies. And when you shift positions or dream of flying or sigh too deeply, they'll recalibrate. Always balancing, always stabilizing, always invisible. Your very own internal pressure valve, running silently and saving your life. Every few seconds, your phone buzzes, or did it? You reach for it already halfway through unlocking the screen only to find nothing. No message, no alert, not even an accidental flashlight trigger. Just your thigh, your pocket, and your imagination conspiring against you again. Welcome to phantom vibration syndrome, that sneaky little quirk of modern life where your tactile sense starts playing tricks on you. You're not alone. In fact, studies estimate that up to 90% of smartphone users experience these phantom alerts. That weird buzzing in your leg, your hip, your jacket sleeve, ghost signals from a phone that isn't even there. It's not a tech glitch. It's a neurosensory hallucination. Your brain has become so conditioned to expect that buzz that it sometimes just invents it. This isn't the same as regular touch. It's your somatosensory system, the network of nerves that delivers tactile information from your skin to your brain, doing a little predictive improv. Think of it like a sleep-deprived intern in the control room misreading incoming signals and yelling, "Yep, that was definitely a buzz," when it was actually just your pants shifting. So what's going on? Your brain doesn't passively receive touch signals, it interprets them. All sensory perception is a combination of incoming data and your brain's best guess about what's happening. That's why you can feel someone looking at you, or why a sudden breeze feels like a tap on the shoulder. The nervous system has limited bandwidth, and it makes assumptions to keep up. With phones, those tiny dopamine dispensers we check dozens of times a day, your brain develops a learned expectation. The slightest skin movement, pressure change, or muscle twitch in a habitual phone zone can be misclassified as vibration. And once that expectation is in place, it takes surprisingly little to activate it. Historically, of course, phantom limb sensations were the OG in this department. Soldiers returning from war with missing limbs often reported pain, itching, or sensation in arms and legs that no longer existed. Neurologists chalked it up to the somatosensory homunculus, the brain's internal body map, refusing to update. It still expected input from that missing limb and got cranky when it didn't arrive. The same principle applies to phantom vibrations, except now, the missing limb is your smartphone. And no, this isn't a full-blown disorder. It's more like a sensory hiccup, a glitch in the way your mechanoreceptors and central nervous system process everyday inputs. Still, it's notable that it happens more in people who report higher levels of stress, anxiety, or tech dependence. Your nervous system's threshold for maybe something's happening gets lower when your mind is already on edge. Ever heard of pareidolia? That's when you see familiar patterns where none exist, like faces in clouds or a rabbit in the moon. Phantom vibrations are basically tactile pareidolia. Your brain's just trying to find order in the chaos, assigning meaning to neutral stimuli. Did my sleeve shift? Must have been my phone. Let's check again. But here's the kicker. Even knowing this doesn't stop it. You can understand exactly how phantom vibrations work, laugh about them, and still feel one 5 minutes later while watching a movie, because it's preconscious. Your body feels first. Your mind reacts second. Let's slide into a historical parallel, because yes, people have always had their version of this. Before phones, there were phantom pocket watches, especially among gentlemen who carried them habitually. Some reported feeling their watch tick after it was removed. Sailors on long voyages often reported the sensation of swaying long after reaching land. Historians still argue whether these were true mechanoreceptive echoes or just brainstem shenanigans, but the theme is the same. Habits rewire perception. A delightfully weird fringe example. During the early telegraph era, some operators developed what they called phantom taps, the feeling of the key clicking even when they weren't touching it. The nervous system, flooded with repetitive, rhythmic touch, continued the pattern after the input stopped. Sound familiar? Your tactile memory, yes, that's a thing, is incredibly powerful. Ever been able to unlock your front door in pitch darkness purely by feel, or type without looking? Your fingers and skin remember textures, pressures, distances. It's part of how you learn, but it's also part of how your brain replays sensations, even without fresh data. And while we're here, let's talk about another modern twist on this theme: phantom ringing, also known as rinxiety. You think you hear your phone ringing, maybe even in the shower or from another room. You rush to check, and again, nothing. Just the wind, or the refrigerator, or your brain making a strong recommendation based on absolutely no evidence. But all this points to something deeper: your body's sense of touch, and specifically its ability to filter, prioritize, and reinterpret signals, is not fixed. It's context-sensitive, it's habit-driven, and it gets confused when the habits are intense, frequent, and emotionally charged, like, say, your relationship with your phone. So is there a fix? Not really, but reducing notifications, turning off haptic feedback, or not keeping your phone in the same pocket all day can help retrain your brain's expectations. You're not crazy, you're just human, and your mechanoreceptors are doing their best. Right now, as you lie still, you might notice the faintest tickle of the blanket edge on your leg, a tiny breeze brushing a hair, a subtle shift in the sheet beneath you. All real stimuli, but whether your brain calls it blanket or incoming text depends entirely on your habits and expectations. Because touch isn't just about what's there. It's also about what used to be, what should be, what might be. You are a skin-covered prediction engine. And sometimes, your nerves just like to mess with you. Your muscles are not quiet. They don't just wait around for orders from your brain like obedient little ropes. They talk, they argue, they report in. Inside every stretch, every lift, every twitch, your muscles and tendons are whispering nonstop updates to your nervous system. And that behind-the-scenes dialogue, that's where the Golgi tendon organs and muscle spindles come in, tiny but powerful sensors forming the muscle whisper network you didn't know you were part of. Let's start with the muscle spindle. These are little cigar-shaped sensory receptors nestled deep inside your skeletal muscles. Their job, detecting stretch. When a muscle lengthens too fast, the spindles send out urgent signals. Whoa, we're stretching way too much here. And the nervous system reacts by contracting the muscle to prevent overstretching. It's a neat little reflex. In fact, it's the same reflex that makes your leg kick out when a doctor taps your knee with that weird rubber hammer. That tap stretches the tendon, which stretches the muscle, which activates the spindles, which yell, "Contract now." Your leg shoots up before you even know what happened. Now, just a few inches down the line, embedded in the tendons that connect your muscles to your bones, live the Golgi tendon organs. These are the stretch's sassy cousins. They respond to tension. If a muscle contracts too hard and risks pulling a tendon too tightly, the Golgi organs fire off their own warning. Okay, that's enough strength, we're about to snap something. The result? The nervous system tells the muscle to relax. This is your body's elegant little push-pull safety system. Spindles say, tighten up. Golgi organs say, back off. This system runs automatically and constantly. You don't think about it. You don't need to. But it's working all the time to prevent injury and maintain posture. Every time you stand on one leg, hold a yoga pose, or stretch your arms after waking up, your spindles and Golgis are in quiet communication, adjusting for balance and stability. And when something feels off, that's often them, tugging on your awareness like a toddler on your sleeve. Historically, these sensory structures weren't well understood until the early 20th century, when neurophysiologists began mapping the complex reflex arcs of muscle control. The discovery that your body had built-in force regulators, mechanical sensors inside the meat of you, was a game changer for both medicine and sports science. Suddenly, movement wasn't just about power, it was about feedback loops. Here's a strange little fringe tidbit. In some martial arts and flexibility training programs, practitioners learn to override the Golgi tendon reflex through slow, controlled stretching. Normally, when you try to touch your toes, your muscles contract reflexively to protect the tendons. But with time and repetition, you can train the system to ease off, allowing deeper stretches. It's not about loosening your muscles, it's about negotiating with your own sensors. And those sensors, they're absolutely everywhere. Nearly every skeletal muscle has these internal monitors. Your calves are full of them, which is why standing on tiptoe for too long creates a strange, vibrating fatigue. Your jaw muscles have them too, some of the most sensitive in the body. That's why clenching your teeth can trigger headaches, or why dentists say chewing too much gum can mess with your temporomandibular joint, TMJ. Too much tension, too little feedback control. And get this, some scientists believe these sensors contribute to your sense of effort. That feeling of how heavy something is, how hard you're working to lift, how long you've been holding a pose, that's not just your muscles screaming. It's the internal signal traffic coming from these tiny sentinels, letting your brain estimate exertion. Without them, you might overdo it, or underperform, or simply not know when to stop. And sometimes they get it wrong. In neurological conditions like multiple sclerosis or cerebral palsy, the feedback loop can be disrupted. Spindles may overreact, causing muscle stiffness or spasms. Golgi organs may underreport, failing to prevent dangerous contractions. And in ALS, where motor neurons deteriorate, the whole system slowly shuts down. You're left with a body that no longer listens to its own sensory whispers. Even in healthy people, fatigue can skew these internal signals. Ever tried lifting something heavy at the gym and realized, too late, that your form was off? Your sensors were probably overwhelmed, the communication delayed. Injuries often happen not because the body lacks strength, but because its internal monitors couldn't respond in time. And yet this whisper network is resilient. Trained athletes have highly developed muscle proprioception. They can feel subtle shifts in pressure and tension, adjusting mid-motion. A ballerina landing a jump doesn't just rely on eyesight. She's tuned into the feedback coming from every toe joint, every tendon. A climber gripping a ledge senses not just where her hand is, but how hard she can hold before her muscles tremble. That's not just strength, that's conversation. Let's toss in a quirky historical gem. Leonardo da Vinci, in his many anatomical sketches, was fascinated by muscle motion but couldn't explain how the body regulated force. He assumed some kind of built-in measuring device must exist, but had no name for it. If only he'd had a microscope or a modern yoga instructor. Even now, as you lie in bed mostly still, your spindles and Golgi organs aren't off duty. If you shift your position, stretch your back, or curl your toes just so, they're quietly relaying information. We're lengthening here, we're relaxing there, okay, steady now. You feel safe, comfortable, not because nothing is happening, but because everything is quietly being monitored. Think of it like this: your muscles are always talking. Not shouting, just checking in. Too tight, too much, still okay. And your brain, it listens. Even in sleep, when you roll over without waking. Even in dreams, when you clench a fist or twitch a leg. Even now, reading this, as your shoulders unconsciously relax. It's the whisper network that holds you together. That keeps you strong. That keeps you safe. You're at the dentist, mouth wide open, face numb, fingers gripping the armrests like you're trying to steer a roller coaster with your knuckles. And then it happens. The drill hums to life, and even though your jaw is technically anesthetized, your entire skull begins to vibrate. You feel it in your cheekbones, behind your eyes, down your spine. You're not in pain, but your bones are listening. Welcome to the wonderfully odd world of bone sensing, where your skeleton doubles as a resonance chamber for pressure, sound, and low-frequency signals your skin and ears might miss. Let's start with the basics. Bones aren't just structural supports. They're laced with mechanoreceptors, specialized cells that detect physical force and deformation. These sensors help regulate things like balance, posture, and even bone density. And while they're not senses in the same way sight or smell are, they absolutely contribute to how your body feels the world, especially through pressure waves. Ever jumped into a pool and hit the water wrong? Maybe belly flopped or cannonballed with enthusiasm but poor form. That jolt wasn't just on the surface. The shock wave moved through your soft tissue and into your bones, where receptors translated it into the complex signal known as ow. That's not pain alone. It's your internal structure relaying the message. The skull in particular is a vibratory superhighway. Your jawbone connects to your middle ear, allowing sound and pressure to travel through bone directly to your cochlea. This is the same bone conduction we explored earlier, but with more nuance. Vibrational pressure through your skeleton doesn't just create sound, it creates sensation. That deep, bassy hum during a thunderstorm, that's not all auditory. Your ribs and spine are in on it too. Let's go historical for a moment. In the 18th and 19th centuries, deaf inventors experimented with various devices that transmitted music and speech through the teeth and skull bones. One such device, the rod conductor, allowed users to press a stick between their teeth that was connected to a piano. The result? Vibrations traveled through the jaw to the inner ear. No ears required, just bones and a willingness to hold a wooden rod while being serenaded. Now jump to the present. Some military communication systems use bone conduction helmets, transmitting audio through the skull so soldiers can hear commands while keeping ears free for environmental sound. Cyclists, swimmers, and runners now use similar tech, listening through cheekbones while keeping the world in audible view. It's a beautiful workaround, using your skeleton as a speaker. But bone sensing isn't just about hearing. It's also deeply tied to pressure and how the body perceives force, strain, and weight. Every time you take a step, osteocytes inside your bones register the mechanical stress. Too little stress, say, due to inactivity, and bones start to lose density. Too much, and the system issues repair signals. That's right, your bones feel the load and respond. They're like slightly cranky civil engineers constantly monitoring structural strain. This process, called mechanotransduction, isn't conscious, but it's crucial. Athletes who train with heavy loads stimulate bone growth. Astronauts floating weightlessly for months return to Earth with weaker bones because their bodies forgot how much pressure things are supposed to endure. Here's a particularly odd fringe tidbit. Researchers once attached tiny vibration motors to the arms and legs of sleeping volunteers, pulsing at low frequencies to see if bones and connective tissues would respond during rest. Result: the muscles twitched, the bones subtly shifted. Even unconscious, the body noticed and responded. Let's not forget about your teeth, technically part of your skeleton and among the most vibration-sensitive structures in your body. Dentists don't just scrape and poke for fun, allegedly. They rely on how vibrations transmit through enamel and dentin to detect cavities or fractures. You might not feel pain, but you do feel the reverberation. That rattling in your jaw isn't just sound. It's tactile feedback through your bone. Some researchers believe this sensitivity evolved in part to help early humans chew more efficiently, or to detect when something dangerous or rotten was in their food. Others suspect it plays a role in speech, as your bones provide a tactile loop that helps monitor and regulate your voice. It's why people who lose hearing can sometimes still speak clearly. They're tracking themselves via vibration. Let's bring it back to sleep for a second. Have you ever woken up with no memory of what you heard but a weird bodily sense that something happened? A low thud, a passing truck, a distant train. It may not have registered as a conscious sound, but your bones might have felt it. Vibrational input during deep sleep can subtly shift heart rate, respiration, even dream content. The body notices the world even when the mind has clocked out. And it's not just your skull and jaw. Your sternum, spine, pelvis, they're all potential conduits for mechanical input. Think of the last time you laid on a subwoofer at a party, or maybe just the floor near one. The sound became a full-body experience. That's not just music. That's vibrational communion, courtesy of your skeleton. There's even a theory that bone sensing could be involved in the startle reflex, that full-body jolt when a loud or sudden sound hits. Part of that reaction isn't just from your ears. It's from your bones picking up the pressure wave milliseconds before your conscious awareness kicks in. And here's the spooky part. Your bones might be among the last sensory systems to stop working. In cases of extreme sensory deprivation or deep coma, mechanoreceptors in the bones and skin may still respond to pressure changes, vibration, or motion. It's not perception in the traditional sense, but it's a final whisper of responsiveness, a last connection to the world. So tonight, lying still, your bones aren't silent. They're feeling the weight of the mattress, the pulse in your chest, the shifting temperature of the air. They remember every step you took today, every chair you sat in, every subtle strain. They're storing the pressure, recalculating the load, maintaining the quiet architecture of you. And in the distance, somewhere beyond the hum of your thoughts, they're listening. To thunder, to footsteps, to the slow, vibrational lullaby of the world turning beneath you. Because even your skeleton needs a bedtime story. You rarely notice your senses until they betray you. That eerie moment when your balance fails, or food tastes like cardboard, or the world feels dull and slippery under your fingers. You assume your perception of reality is stable, constant, always available. But what happens when it vanishes? What happens when your hidden senses go missing, or worse, when they never existed in the first place? It's more common than you think. Let's start with congenital insensitivity to pain. It sounds like a superpower. No pain, no suffering, but it's not. It's a dangerous condition where individuals are born without functioning nociceptors. These people don't feel pain from cuts, burns, broken bones, or illness. Children with this condition often injure themselves repeatedly. They might chew through their own tongues or walk on fractured ankles without noticing. Without pain as a warning, the body becomes a danger to itself. Historically, cases like these were dismissed as anomalies or even miracles. There's a documented account from the 1930s of a young girl in Sweden who could place her hands on a hot stove and smile serenely. Doctors were baffled. Today, we understand this as a severe neurological disorder, often genetic. There is no cure, only management through constant vigilance. And it's a stark reminder. Pain, annoying as it is, protects you. Then there's the subtler sense of proprioception, which we've met before, that quiet awareness of body position. Some people are born without it. No injury, no accident, just an absence. They must watch their own limbs to move them. Imagine trying to walk without any idea where your legs are, or trying to pick up a cup without looking directly at your hand. This is reality for people like Ian Waterman, whose story we touched on earlier. Without proprioception, movement becomes choreography, every gesture a conscious, effortful decision. Some people lose these senses later in life. Peripheral neuropathy, often caused by diabetes, chemotherapy, or autoimmune conditions, damages the nerves responsible for touch, proprioception, and temperature. Feet become numb. Balance deteriorates. A simple walk across the room turns into a cautious, arm-waving endeavor. These people aren't clumsy. They're navigating a world without landmarks. Now let's drift into interoception. When this internal sense of the body breaks down, the consequences aren't always visible, but they're profound. People may not realize they're hungry or thirsty. They may miss the signs of an oncoming panic attack or fail to notice fatigue until they collapse. This is common in neurodivergent individuals, particularly those on the autism spectrum, who may describe their bodies as quiet or unclear. Some experience alexithymia, an inability to identify or describe internal emotional states, closely linked to interoceptive dysfunction. Emotions aren't just abstract, they're bodily. If you can't feel the racing heart, the stomach drop, the hot flush, it's harder to know you're anxious, or sad, or excited. This can create a wall between sensation and self-awareness, making emotional regulation feel like trying to tune a radio with the volume off. One of the more dramatic disruptions occurs in vestibular disorders. When your inner ear malfunctions, balance becomes unreliable. The world spins. You stagger while standing still. Some conditions, like Meniere's disease, strike suddenly and viciously, with vertigo, nausea, and hearing loss. Others, like vestibular neuritis, can linger for weeks or months, making walking feel like floating on a poorly constructed raft. Historians still argue whether madness in early case studies might have been undiagnosed vestibular dysfunction. Think about it: chronic vertigo, nausea, strange eye movements, irrational behavior. To the untrained observer in the 1600s, it might look like demonic possession. To a neurologist today, probably an inner ear issue. And then there's anosmia, the loss of smell, something many people became familiar with during COVID-19. At first, it's just weird. Food tastes bland, scents vanish. But over time, it becomes disorienting. You realize how much of your world was anchored in smell. Clean laundry, morning coffee, the comforting scent of a loved one's skin. Some people with long-term anosmia report emotional numbness, depression, and a strange feeling of disconnection from reality. Even more unnerving is phantasmia, smelling things that aren't there. People report persistent smells of smoke, chemicals, or rotting food. It's not imagination, it's a misfiring olfactory system, often triggered by brain injury or infection. The body becomes an unreliable narrator. The sense of taste can also disappear, especially after radiation treatment, nerve damage, or certain illnesses. This isn't just an inconvenience. Appetite, mood, even social bonding erode when food becomes meaningless. One patient described eating as chewing beige foam. Without flavor, meals become mechanical. You eat to survive, not to connect or celebrate. Let's not forget thermoception. Damage to the nervous system can leave people unable to detect heat or cold. They can burn themselves in the shower without noticing, or freeze without realizing their body temperature is dropping. This isn't rare. It's often seen in advanced diabetes or spinal cord injuries. Thermoregulation requires input, and without sensation, the system runs blind. Even the perception of time can vanish. People with certain brain injuries, schizophrenia, or extreme dissociation may report a complete disconnection from temporal flow. Seconds stretch, hours collapse. Some describe it as living outside of time, a kind of sensory exile where the present moment feels either eternal or absent. Chronoception isn't just abstract, it's an anchor. When it slips, reality becomes unmoored. And perhaps most eerily, touch. Some individuals lose the ability to feel touch entirely. Damage to the somatosensory cortex or peripheral nerves can leave whole regions of the body numb. Others develop allodynia, where even gentle touch becomes painful. A breeze on the arm, a bedsheet on the skin can feel like sandpaper. It's not hypersensitivity, it's misinterpretation. The body is confused and no one can convince it otherwise. So what happens when you lose a sense? You adapt, other senses step in. The brain rewires. A person with no proprioception learns to move by sight. A person who loses smell learns to rely more on texture, sound, and memory. This isn't compensation, it's evolution on fast forward. Neuroplasticity is astonishing, but it's not always perfect. Some losses never fully heal. Some leave shadows, phantoms of sensation that once was, a remembered itch, a feeling of motion that never comes, a taste you chase but never find again. But even in loss, there's complexity. There's resilience. There's mystery. Because your body isn't static. It adjusts, it rewrites. It listens, even when parts fall silent. And tonight, as you lie here in the dark, remember this. Even the quiet parts of you are still part of you. Even the missing ones. Even the senses you forgot you had. You've spent most of your life tuning out your body, not in a neglectful way, just in the usual human way. Your stomach growls and you answer it. Your leg aches so you stretch. You're thirsty so you drink. It's automatic mostly, untrained, reactive. But what if you could train your hidden senses? What if, instead of tuning out, you tuned in? Welcome to the fascinating, sometimes bizarre world of biofeedback, body hacks, and the deliberate awakening of senses most people never notice. Let's start simple. Biofeedback is the practice of measuring a normally unconscious bodily function, like heart rate, breathing, or muscle tension, and learning to control it with your mind. That's not mystical, that's neurology. By watching your own biological data on a screen, say your pulse displayed in real time, you start to notice how certain thoughts or actions affect your state. Deep breath, pulse slows. Stressful thought, it jumps. Over time, you learn to steer these processes with precision. Athletes use this. So do musicians, pilots, and people managing chronic pain or anxiety. It's like giving yourself a user manual for your own internal dashboard. But biofeedback doesn't just train your brain. It sharpens your interoception, your sense of what's happening inside your body. Over time, people trained in biofeedback report being able to sense subtle shifts in heart rate, muscle activity, or even temperature before the machine detects it. Your perception catches up to the data, and then you surpass it. There's a fringe but delightful subculture of people who try to train even weirder senses. Some use compass belts, wearable devices that buzz gently when you face magnetic north. The idea, with enough time, your brain might integrate that signal into your proprioceptive map. It becomes instinctual. And yes, after weeks of constant use, some participants say they can feel direction without the buzz, suggesting a kind of borrowed magnetoception. Are they right? Science isn't sure yet. But it's tantalizing. Here's another strange one. Thermal training. Monks in the Himalayas have long been studied for their ability to control body temperature in freezing conditions. Through tummo meditation, they produce enough internal heat to dry soaking wet sheets wrapped around them in the cold. Scientists have recorded measurable increases in skin temperature. This isn't magic. It's practiced interoceptive control, mental discipline altering bodily functions most of us think of as automatic. Let's move into pain. Pain management through visualization is a well-documented phenomenon. People with chronic pain have learned to reduce discomfort by imagining the pain as a colored shape, breathing it out, or shrinking it in their mind. MRI studies show that this kind of focused attention can reduce activity in pain-related brain regions. Again, you're not ignoring the pain, you're reinterpreting it. This is your nociception being influenced by thought. Your perception changes the message. Historically, many ancient practices anticipated these techniques long before we had EEGs or wearables. Yogic breath control, pranayama, martial arts-focused training, fasting, and chanting rituals all involve honing awareness of bodily states and modulating internal sensation. Historians still argue whether these practices were early forms of biofeedback, spiritual exploration, or both. Either way, they knew what modern neuroscience is rediscovering. Your senses aren't fixed, they're trainable. Now here's a weird one for your sleepy brain: echolocation. Yes, like bats. Some blind individuals have developed the ability to navigate by making clicking sounds and listening for the echoes. This isn't a metaphor. They can detect walls, objects, even motion. MRI scans reveal that their visual cortex, yes, the part of the brain usually reserved for seeing, is activated by sound. The brain, denied sight, repurposes that real estate. It adapts. It listens in new ways. What if your brain could do that with other senses? Well, it might already be trying. Some people with vision loss report heightened tactile sensitivity. Some people with anosmia develop sharper taste or texture awareness. And in conditions like sensory substitution, devices have been built to convert visual data into vibrations, allowing users to feel images in real time. After enough training, these users stop thinking of it as vibration. They start calling it vision. The brain doesn't care what channel the data comes through. It just wants data. And then there's your gut. Emerging research into the gut-brain axis suggests you might be able to sense, not just react to, your own microbiome activity. People on certain restrictive diets or those recovering from digestive disorders often report intuitive awareness of food reactions or energy shifts after meals. Is this refined interoception, Pavlovian learning, or something more? Scientists aren't sure, but the idea that you could sense your own digestion in real time is gaining credibility. Want to train your own internal senses? Start with the breath. Seriously. Focus on it without changing it. Notice the inhale, the pause, the exhale. Then change it, slow it, deepen it, and see what happens to your heart rate, your tension, your mental clarity. That's step one, the gateway sense. From there, you might start noticing other things. The gentle pulse in your fingertips, the stretch in your calves, the flutter of your stomach in response to a thought. These are signals you've always had. You just weren't trained to hear them. And once you do, the whole world changes. Your environment becomes richer. Your body becomes an ally, not a mystery. And your senses, those so-called hidden ones, step into the light. So tonight, as your breath slows and your muscles soften into the mattress, notice what's still active, what's still reporting in. The quiet churn of your gut, the tingling in your hands, the faint warmth behind your eyes. These aren't distractions. They're invitations. Train them and they grow louder. Ignore them and they don't go away. They just wait, ready for the moment you finally decide to listen. You are more than the sum of your parts, but your parts, they've been quietly collaborating all along. Your hidden senses, those unsung, uncelebrated channels of perception, have been shaping your choices, anchoring your emotions, guiding your midnight cravings, and keeping you from falling down the stairs in the dark since the day you learned to walk. This is the story of the you that you don't notice, the strange, elegant, constantly recalibrating creature you've been living inside all along. We tend to think of our identity as mental, a set of thoughts, memories, beliefs, maybe a strong opinion about pineapple on pizza. But beneath that narrative self is the sensory self, the you that feels the world even when you're not trying. That body-stored self-awareness lives in proprioception, interoception, nociception, and all the other ceptions you've been quietly deploying since birth. Even your sense of intuition, that gut feeling when something feels off, isn't just mystical nonsense. It's your internal sensory network doing predictive processing. Your brain and body are constantly running simulations, comparing input to expectation. When the input doesn't match, you get a weird feeling. Maybe it's tension in your neck, a flutter in your chest, a sudden disinterest in a conversation. That's your body, not your mind, speaking first. And it's not just reacting to the present. Your sensory history, all the smells, temperatures, textures, rhythms, and shifts you've experienced, have shaped the very architecture of your brain. Neural maps are drawn not just by learning facts, but by moving through space, by holding things, falling, hugging, sleeping. Even now, lying still, the exact way your shoulder nestles into the pillow is part of a long series of sensory memories that taught you how to rest. Here's a fun historical tangent to chew on. René Descartes, famous for "I think, therefore I am," once believed the soul interacted with the body through the pineal gland, a tiny structure in the center of the brain. Modern science would scoff, but Descartes wasn't totally wrong about the body-mind connection. We now know that sensation and identity are deeply intertwined. When one shifts, so does the other. Ever had a fever so strong that you felt like a different person? Or been so sleep-deprived your emotions ran wild? That's not just mood, that's sensory disorientation. Your interoception skewed, your baroception scrambled, your whole body throwing off the inner alignment that makes your you-ness feel stable. You were yourself, because your senses weren't syncing. And yes, food decisions, especially those mysterious midnight snack urges, are often rooted in hidden sensory cues. Ghrelin, your hunger hormone, rises with darkness. Your body, now in wind-down mode, starts craving easily digestible calories. But it's not just biology, it's associative memory. If you once had warm cookies on a cold night, your skin's memory of that warmth, your nose's recall of that scent, your tongue's recognition of sweetness, all converge into an internal urge disguised as a passing craving. Even your sleep position is a sensory habit. Some people can't sleep unless their shoulders a certain way or unless they're facing a door. Others need a blanket across their chest for interoceptive pressure or a fan humming for low-frequency mechanoreceptive rhythm. These aren't quirks. They're personalized sensory rituals, subtle hacks your body developed to soothe and settle itself. Let's not forget how hidden senses guide social connection. Eye contact feels like visual attention, but it's actually multisensory. It blends proprioceptive awareness, you know your own head is angled. Interoception, you sense emotional tension, and even magnetoception, because body orientation in space feels different when you face someone. Touch, temperature, and olfactory signals all flow through interpersonal interactions. Most of it goes unnoticed, but it lands anyway. Here's a fringe but delightful tidbit. In certain Eastern philosophies, the subtle body is said to be the layer of you that feels energy, direction, and emotional flow without conscious effort. While not scientifically defined, this idea maps surprisingly well onto our modern understanding of hidden senses. That tingling you get in a charged moment, that sensation of being drawn to or repelled by someone without explanation, could be nervous system input, could be baroreceptors, could be magnetite in your sinuses twitching gently northward. The point is, you are more sensed than sensed. Your consciousness rides on a sea of ongoing internal updates, most of which never make it to language. Your body is doing 99% of the perception and just letting your brain take the credit. Classic brain. But now that you know, you can start listening. That slight shift in your breathing when you think about something stressful. The warm flush across your cheeks when you remember someone you miss. The way your fingertips rest against the blanket, lightly curled, not idle but present. You're not just lying there. You're feeling your way through the night. So here's your last sleepy metaphor. You are a ship. Your senses are the instruments. Some are loud, spotlights, horns, sails. But others are faint, the weather gauge, the hull's groan, the whisper of current under the keel. And the journey, that's you, steering by signals you barely notice. Guided by instincts you didn't know you had. You are not a brain in a jar. You are a symphony of sensors. And the song has been playing all along.